Alright, welcome back to another video. Today is going to be the cut content video for 8. A lot more to go over in this one. A lot more that could have changed certain areas in the game. It's very, very interesting, and obviously potentially, do not take this with a guarantee. Now that they've announced DLC, some of this content could be added in the future. 100% not a guarantee, just throwing it out there now. Nothing I say in this video is guaranteed DLC, but again, like I mentioned last time, if you have these ideas already and it doesn't make the full game, you could always potentially make it to DLC. If you want some ideas about DLC, then I have a video talking about all the possibilities for DLC, along with another one coming up within a week that I completely skipped over. There could potentially be a huge DLC for 8, but we'll wait and see. But yeah, this is going to be a cut content video, going over what could have been, and just taking a look together. So, without any further ado, let's jump right into it. Alright, let's get the elephant out of the room first, shall we? The elephant in the room, everyone. The Ada concept art. This was originally supposed to be the case that in the trial, right at the beginning of the game, when the four lords discussing who would deal with Ethan, she would turn up to save him instead of going through that death trap run you have to do instead. She looks awesome in disguise as like a plague doctor with a crossbow, you know, signature weapon of Vader. But this was cut due to a number of conflicting scenarios, and who knows what that could mean. There's potential that she appears in a future game, and it would make sense that she was in Village. There is potential for something we don't know about, and then obviously there is DLC. They could always make this DLC if they wanted to. The character model, well obviously it's art, but the character looks very fleshed out, it's very detailed, and I can imagine there was already some solid groundwork down for the character in terms of actually being in the game, not just a piece of artwork. But this is the big one. This is the one where everyone looks at it and goes, this should be DLC. And you wouldn't be wrong, I would like to see it too, but if there was conflicting scenarios, a number of them, it says specifically, then don't hold your breath. But I guess they could do like a, for the DLC, I don't know. But I'm not going to get into more DLC here, but they could just do like an alternate events DLC where this happens instead of what actually happens. But who knows? This is just, I don't know, the concept art looks really cool, and obviously Ada is a well-known character, because as far as we're aware right now, only Chris is in the universe still right now. It's all canon, obviously 7 and 8 are canon, so all those characters do exist, like Leon and Jill, but so far, just Chris. But that seems like it could change very, very soon. Alright, next up we have a early design for Lady D, Dimitrescu, everyone's favourite vampire character in anything ever, apparently. She, in this original idea, she looks more like the daughters look now. I personally prefer the look of the daughters in the game to her, but that's my opinion. I know people don't agree with me, but for the most part it seems the internet kind of prefers Dimitrescu over those. She looks pretty cool like this, I'll admit. She looks very different. Very, very different. Carrying a big pair of scissors, like your boy Jack in 7, who pulls out his big chainsaw scissors. But maybe not that big. But definitely looks cool still. Definitely is a good thing that she did change, because I don't know if they were going to use that for all 4 of the vampires. But if they were, it would have been, I don't know, you would kind of need to define who was in charge, and obviously they changed that drastically with her being super duper tall and, a bit more regal looking. So the design game now is great, but this would have been also cool to see as well, I would think. Moving on, we have Donna's mansion house. Originally, this was meant to be a ghost house. Obviously, that turns out not to be the case with what you come face to face within that house. But this was originally going to be a ghost house consisting of her entire family. Obviously, she's there by herself in the full game with her dolls. But this would have been, a whole family kind of deal, with all of them being there, kind of as ghosts. Still, obviously, would have been, like the horror portion of the game. Because it is definitely kind of the scary part of the game. Obviously, more playthroughs, it kind of wears down. But first time thrown through, oof, that was creepy shit, dude. It was great. But yeah, it would have been very different to see like all these different characters come to life. There is brief mention of them all, I think, in the game. I think if you explore the house a little bit, you can kind of see some notes about them. But that was changed, obviously, to the, well, what you see in the game now. Because I'm not going to spoil anything for anyone who hasn't got that far, who hasn't played it yet. But I'd imagine if you have seen this video, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Alright, next on the list, we have like I think probably just a small scene where you would see some younger men in the village drinking from a chalice. I would imagine it would have been mould or blood, and this would have turned them into the Lycans you see now. Very different to how it actually turns out to be the case in game. As far as you actually see in the game, you just get bit and then turn into one, like how Elena, is it Elena? Elena's dad in the beginning of the game also gets bit or scratched, and he turns into a Lycan zombie dude. But this would have been a very different way of looking at it, and also kind of cool. It would have been cool to see like a really gothic type scene where these guys drink from a massive cup and turn into werewolves, but was not to be. There's still some kind of resemblance to that scene if you look through the stronghold area, when you're kind of creeping through the gap. You can see all the Lycans hanging up on bodies that are hung there eating, and that background area you see in the picture just kind of look like where they are. So didn't entirely go to waste, but didn't end up being a massive point of the game, which is a shame. But at the same time, how they did it in game was still perfectly fine with me. Okay, next up we have some early concepts for my personal favourite character in the entire game, and that's Heisenberg. Heisenberg was originally not going to just be him. He was a twin, and his mother was also in the game, but she was being tested on. Just the worst things. I'd imagine the same thing would still happen. She was being tested on to kind of like build his super soldiers, but it wasn't just him originally. There was two of them. I love Heisenberg. I think it's probably the best of the lords, and honestly, backstory wise, also probably one of the best. He has the biggest arc of all the lords, I would say. He's just great. I love him. But yeah, originally it was not just going to just be him. It was going to be two of them, which would have been crazy. But there's more to that. We'll get to in just a moment. Oh, also there was going to be just 3 Heisenbergs? No, there was going to be 4 of them. The mother, the twins, and his dad. His dad was originally the leader of the village, and would have been the big mechanical boss fight instead of Heisenberg himself. It would have been his dad. Which is super cool. Obviously Heisenberg's father and mother and brother aren't a thing in the game. It's just him. But would have really kind of upped that whole portion of the game, wouldn't it? Being just 4 characters instead of 1. I guess that's why they cut it down, because of all the lords, if that was how they did it, he would have had the most around him with his whole family, where, you know, obviously Dimitrescu had 3 daughters. You kind of get through the daughters quite easily, and then it's just her. But you know, with Heisenberg, if there's 2, if it's him and his brother as like the ones who are running the factory, and then his mother's there, probably not an enemy, but still there, and Heisenberg's dad being in charge of the village, it would have been just a lot. And I believe Heisenberg's dad was then replaced by Miranda, who is, as we know, the leader of the village in the full game. So it would have played out very differently, and they clearly had a lot more plans for Heisenberg. But you know what? How he is in the game now, it's brilliant. I love it so much. Next up, we have a different version of how people turn into the Lycans, and this is simply you would offer yourself, or you would be captured, either way, and you would be then encased in like a mold kind of cocoon. If you remember back to the concepts of 7, if you've seen some of the ones I didn't show, what they would do in 7 is those bathtubs on the part of the house. They would lie the victims in there and then cover them in mold, leave them there for days, and then eventually they would turn. But in this, you would just kind of be cocooned by it, and then you would be rebirthed as like a Lycan, which would have again been super cool. You don't actually see that at any point in the game, but obviously all those Lycans are kind of mold monsters in their own sense, so it kind of, I guess it kind of lingers there in the background. It could potentially be what happened, but you know, it isn't there. Again, would have been cool to see. It's not necessary to see, but it still would have been super cool to see. And you know, I personally think the mold infection, you know, the mutant moisture and all that kind of stuff is super cool, very interesting, and I don't know, dude, I would like to have seen that, but it is what it is. And last but certainly not least, we have a big boy who has two more of those big boys. You know, the big wolf, proper wolves, the big dogs. Basically, there's like a handful of them in the game you have to fight. Has two of them chained up with him. Can you imagine how hard that would be to fight? You're one of those big guys that turns up. I think it's probably the butcher. That's probably the big guy in the picture. Obviously, the butcher's house is just before the stronghold. You take a left. Little extra boss fight for you. Very fun, very cool, and it's a good place to get some meat if you want to get those upgrades. But I'd imagine that's him, and then he has two big pet dogs. That would have been, if that was the boss. Now, I'm not saying that was a boss fight on its own, but if that was a boss fight, that would be sick. Like, I would love that. You get him down to like 50%, and he lets one go, and you get him down to like the last 10%, and he lets another one go, and you fight all of them, or you could fight all of them at once. You never know what they could have done. But I think I do believe the visual look of the enemies in Village, whether that's the Lycans, the big dogs. I'm not going to try and pronounce what they're called. The vampire slave things. All the enemy designs are really cool, and especially the bosses. I think the bosses look amazing, whether that's their normal form and their mutated form. I think they all look super cool. And seeing something like this would have been so cool to look at, and to probably get my ass kicked by multiple times. And that's gonna do it. Like I said, very, very big differences could have came to this game through, you know, Heisenberg and Dimitrescu and some of like the general ideas in terms of story. Could have been a completely different game. Now again, I did mention some of these things could potentially come into play in DLC, whether that's certain enemies, certain backstories, or certain characters, but we'll have to wait and see, and, you know, kind of look at what Capcom show us when they are ready to announce the DLC, which is coming later. Who knows how later that's going to be? I'd imagine we'll know in the next, like, we'll know by the end of the year what's coming, I'd imagine. Maybe it's even out at that point. But until they say, we'll have to just kind of hope and make our own assumptions. Like I said, there's a video I've made a few days ago now, where we kind of go over the big ideas for DLC and some ideas that I personally have, and then there'll be another one some point after this where I want to go into it in a bit more detail. It could be a big one, it could be nothing, but it could be a big one. But we'll wait and see. But this has been a brief look at some of the concept art from 8 that I believe was super interesting, and hopefully that you find interesting too. If you've seen it before, let me know which other ones are in there that you think I should have looked at, or that you think is really cool. And if you haven't seen it, well, there you go. Hopefully no one who hasn't played the game is watching this video. Obviously, you know, if you haven't played the game and I'm talking to you at this point, then you probably shouldn't have watched it. But if you have played the game and you are watching at this point, it's crazy how much it would have changed. But that's going to do it. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts about all this original ideas down in the comments. Subscribe if you are new, turn notifications for more Resident Evil videos and streams. And I'll see you all tomorrow.